What's up, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with our running back rankings part 2. We're going to be going over our guys ranked 13 to 24 today. If you're new, please comment, like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Okay, at RB13, I've got Joe Mixon. The reason that I've got him here is because last year, even in limited games, he averaged 19.8 attempts per game, which is a lot from a volume standpoint, and he was on pace for 56 receptions as well. I just think that Joe Mixon, he got his contract recently. He's a workhorse back. I expect them to make some heavily address the offensive line in the offseason just because it's just such a major issue and weakness on the team. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to get drastically improved this year, but it means I don't think it'll be worse than it was last season, when Joe Mixon was still able to be productive, even in limited snaps. And if Joe Burrow is ready to go by the regular season, I think he's going to be a steal if you're getting him in that at RB13. Number 14, we've got Cam Akers. He's a guy who I think could be a real league winner in 2021, especially if he gets the entire workload. Last year, he had at least 15 carries every game from week 13 on. That's 17.8. He averaged 17.8 carries per game over that stretch, which is quite a lot. That includes the playoff game he had against the Packers as well in there. The reason I like Cam Akers so much going into next season is he had the draft capital. He's a 52nd overall pick, second-round pick last season. And as we can see, the Rams really made the transition the second half of the year to using him as the workhorse. And if he's used as the workhorse on an every down basis, including the passing game, which I think is definitely in his skill set, something he was good at college, looked good catching passes at the combine, caught some passes last year. I think if it's really his job outright the next season, he's going to absolutely be a fantasy stud if he can play 16 games because we've seen, Todd Gurley in that Sean McVay offense when he was the only guy. Not saying he's as talented as Todd Gurley or the offensive line is as good as it was then, but whoever the running back is in Sean McVay's scheme is going to produce for fantasy. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like that's going to be Cam Akers in 2021. Moving on to number 15, we have James Robinson. James Robinson had 289 touches in 14 games as rookie. That's 20.6 touches per game, which is an 85.2% opportunity share for the Jacksonville Jaguars, meaning he was getting 85.2% of all running back touches for the Jaguars. And to put that into perspective, Derrick Henry, who had rushed for over 2,000 yards last year and had 397 touches, his opportunity share was only 78.5%. Now, why do I say all this? Because I think that his opportunity share is going to come down in 2021, almost guaranteed. I think that they're going to draft somebody, another running back, or maybe it's an undrafted guy or something like that. But as long as they don't draft somebody in the first 4 or 5 rounds, and I don't think that they will. I mean, I think there's definitely a chance, but I think there's a lot more issues on this team besides backup running back, and I think James Robinson is going to step up. He maybe, let's say he gets 75% opportunity share next year. His touches are going to come down, but he could still be very good for fantasy. Trevor Lawrence is only going to make that team better, I think anyway. I think their quarterback position, they got pretty bad production from it last year, and I think that will be a major benefit to the offense. So I think that helps James Robinson even if the volume comes down a little bit. Number 16, we have Antonio Gibson. He's another guy who honestly I think could be a league winner in 2021. His 16 game as a rookie, he was on pace for 193 carries and 41 receptions. And then if you take his pace from week 10 on, he was on pace for 245 carries. When he came out of college, he was one of those guys, I think he had more receptions than carries or close to. He didn't have a ton of carries coming out of college. He profiled more as a pass-catching down back. They made him that profiled more of his skill set. He can definitely run in between the tackles. As we saw, he was on pace for 245 carries. I think he can get close to that 245 carry workload. I think that's what I kind of expect for him going forward to next year. I think he'll be well over 200 carries. And I expect the reception number to come up a lot. I think he could be easily a 50, 60-plus reception guy pretty easily. And I think when you're talking about that workload with their good offensive line, obviously we don't know who their quarterback's going to be going into the next season, but with Alex Smith last year, if they could get any kind of upgrade at that position, I think Antonio Gibson is just ready to be a fantasy goon in 2021. 17, we've got J.K. Dobbins. J.K. had double-digit carries all but 2 weeks from week 8 on. And they have a dominant run game in Baltimore. They run the ball more than anyone else. Big chunk of their rushing attempts is Lamar, of course, which you have to factor in. But even when you factor that in, J.K. I think is a guy who could be a fantasy beast next year. If he doesn't even need all the work, but let's say he's getting 15 carries a game in that type of offense and scheme, I think he is just going to be gashing people. I love his running style. I think he runs violent. I think he runs aggressive. And I think when the increase in workload, as we saw towards the end of last year, he was extremely productive with it. I think he's going to continue to be in this scheme. I think he's a good scheme fit. I think even pass catching, it's not something that they do in their scheme a lot, but I think he has that skill set if they choose to use him in that. And I think he's going to be a really good player in 2021. Number 18, this might be a bit of a surprise. We've got Miles Sanders. The reason that he's so high up on this list is because his O-line was really banged up in 2021 and in 2020 last season. They had a lot of injuries. Lane Johnson got hurt. Andre Dillard got hurt. Those are both their tackle spots. Those are big positions. They had other injuries all over the offensive line, though. Carson Wentz was obviously very bad last year, and I think that's highlighted as you can see that his catch percentage dropped from 2019, where he was at almost 80%, to 2020 he had a less than 54%. Catch on, that was his catch rate on his targets. And running back position is usually very high, especially if you're skilled pass catchers like Miles Sanders is. So I think one of the big parts of this reason is just because the inaccuracies of Carson Wentz. I think any kind of new quarterback will be better. His catch percentage will come up. He got the ball a good amount last year, even though he was banged up too. I think if they get a new coach in there and they don't draft another running back with a healthy offensive line, just average quarterback play, I think he's going to be much better than he was last year. I think he's a great opportunity for a post-hype sleeper. Not many people are talking about him, but if you could get him in that, I think there's a chance you could get him in that third, fourth round turn. And I think if you're getting him as your fourth player, I think you've got a great chance to win some fantasy games. Number 19, we have David Montgomery, who finished at RB4 in 2020. Part of the reason, though, he's able to do this is because his schedule was very easy, especially over the second half of the season. And another big reason that I think gets forgotten is Tariq Cohen tore his ACL in Week 3. And if you look at David Montgomery's snap counts, as soon as Tariq Cohen got hurt, his snap counts go from 55, 65 in that range up to the 80% snap counts most weeks. And I just don't know if they'll really continue to use him as an every down back once Tariq Cohen is back. I think that he'll be used more as that first down banger role behind for the Bears, which don't have a good offensive line, don't have a good quarterback. We don't know what their plan is for 2021 at quarterback. So for all these reasons, I've got David Montgomery at 19. He could go up. Like I said, we just have to see what the team does, but not super bought into him at this point just because I think he's one of those guys who's in line for a lot less work. I think a lot of the production he had in 2020 was due to his the poor scheduling. And not that you can have, you can't be RB4 and just contribute that all to scheduling. It also was Tariq Cohen. I just think he had the perfect storm in 2020. I don't see him finishing as an RB1 in 2021, honestly, unless Chicago either changes things schematically, meaning they're going to start giving him the ball on an every down basis, make him the guy even when Cohen's healthy, or they improve dramatically on offense. Number 20, we got DAndre Swift. DAndre Swift had 46 receptions in 13 games as a rookie, which is quite a bit. He didn't get the ball a ton as a rookie. He battled injuries too, which was part of it. And just I think all the rookie running backs, backs in 2020 that were rookies, so now they're being their sophomore season, were at a disadvantage in 2020 just because of the shortened off season that they had. I think especially when it comes to pass catching, I think it's very difficult for these guys to be learning all the pass protections as well as the routes and getting on the same page with the quarterbacks and being able to be trusted by their coaches and all of that stuff when you're doing a lot of stuff over Zoom. But I think the opportunity is there for him. He was the 35th overall pick, early second-round pick just last year, and there's 156 carries and leaving in Adrian Peterson. I think he's in line to be the guy in the backfield. I just don't know how good the Detroit Lions are going to be. They're losing a lot on offense. They got a new head coach. I think he will still catch the ball, and I expect them to be down a lot, but I just don't know how good he is going to be in Detroit, honestly, with all their offensive liabilities. But let's move on to 21. Kareem Hunt. He was very productive in 2020. He finished the season as RB10, But the reason that I have him at this 21 spot is just because all the guys we looked at so far aren't playing second fiddle to anyone. He is the second fiddle in Cleveland, though, undoubtedly. I think he's a better pass catcher than Nick Chubb, but Nick Chubb's definitely the better runner. I think Cleveland definitely views him as the guy there. Even though he was using that goal line role some last year with Nick Chubb, I don't think that's guaranteed to continue. But I think he's just such a talented player. Even though he got the bump from the several weeks where Nick Chubb was out last year, I still think he'll be a worthwhile running back, even though he's the second guy in his team, and someone that can help you win fantasy games next year, as long as you're not drafting him at that RB10 spot. So at 22, we've got Travis Etienne. Etienne's here. He's a rookie. We don't know where he's going to land, but he was an all-time leading rusher at Clemson in ACC history. He caught 85 passes over his last two college seasons, which is quite a bit for a college running back. And he has a nose for the end zone. He scored over 20 touchdowns before in a single season at Clemson. I mean, the guy is just an absolute beast. Could have easily come out last year and been a high draft pick. Decided to go back to school. He's coming out now. I think his pro comp, to me, the way he plays, I think he looks like an even better Dalvin Cook. So I have very high expectations for him as a rookie, and if he ends up going the right spot, I think he's going to be an immediate contributor for fantasy teams for 2021. Number 23, we got another rookie, Najee Harris. His size and pass catching ability. He has the size, and pass catching ability to play in the NFL. He had 43 receptions in 2020, which is a ton, especially for him. He's a back. He's 6'2", 230. He's closer to that Derrick Henry size than Christian McCaffrey, but he was still able to, catch a ton of passes, and with that frame, he might not be used like that he might not be used like that traditionally, as you would think of a 6'2", 230-pound running back, but he's very talented catching the ball. He did play on that very good offensive line at Alabama last year. It was probably the best in college football, so his landing spot is going to be huge. Not that landing spot is big for no matter who you are, but I think it'll be big for him because he is one of those. If he goes somewhere with a really good offensive line, year one, he can get that big body, can get some momentum, getting that second level consistently. I think he could be a stud in fantasy. But if he goes to the wrong place where they've got a banged up offensive line, I think he could be, in a